My name is John Santaferraro, and this is the Digital Analyst, where AI makes sense and digital dominance begins.
The Digital Analyst with John Santaferraro, powered by Insight Jam.
Today, we are going deep into AI agents and agentic architectures. A few weeks ago, I did my first podcast on AI agents, a technology that we're already seeing eclipse what happened in generative AI over the last couple of years. And today, we are going deeper into what it takes to build an agentic architecture. The AI agents are coming, and we need to be ready. Hopefully, there won't be an army of them, but there could be thousands and millions of AI agents that show up on the scene. How can I make such a claim? Well, think about this. Hugging Face, the burgeoning AI company, already has 1.4 million models, apps, and data sets under management. It's happening. My guests today are Ravi Ramachandran and Dave Brewster, co-founders of the open source agentic architecture company Eidolon. Ravi is co-founder and CEO with executive experience at companies like Okera, Waterline Data, and DXC, with experience all the way back to the days of Scient and Moody Analytics. He is a self-proclaimed startup-tarian with several acquisitions on his belt. Dave is co-founder and head of engineering at what is now his number 7 startup. That's right, 7 startups. Dave has CTO experience at DataRobot and Paxata, where he was also a co-founder. His engineering leadership includes Guidewire Software and goes all the way back to his days at Sun Microsystems and Net Dynamics. Ravi and Dave are building an open source agentic platform called Eidolon, a framework that helps developers build and deploy enterprise-grade Gen AI applications, and my favorite topic, AI agents. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and join me on my Tuscan farm in the hills between Lucca and Florence in Italy. Join me for the Digital Analyst. A big digital welcome to Ravi and Dave. I am so excited that you guys are here today. I recently did a podcast on AI agents and agentic architectures, and 40 minutes, we barely skimmed the surface. And I'm excited to have you guys here today because I know we're going to go deep. We're going down deep into agentic architectures. We might even get a little bit philosophical about why agentic architectures and maybe even years of agentic architectures going all the way back to 1995. Who knows where we'll go, but excited to have you guys on the Digital Analyst.
Thanks for having us, John. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John. Great to reconnect with you, and looking forward to going on a great ride together over the next 45 minutes.
Awesome. So you two founded a company that is doing agentic architectures, Eidolon. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of agentic architectures, I have a question. What is your why? What prompted you to want to build a company and a platform for AI agents? What made you do that?
Yeah, totally. So I'll take this one, Ravi. A couple reasons. One is our background, and my background particularly is in enterprise, right? So for sure it's an enterprise. So we were looking to build a Gen AI application about data for the enterprise. And this was a year and a half ago, so a little while. And in Gen AI terms, it's like 5 lifetimes. But for us, it's just a year and a half ago. And we realized very quickly that in order to solve any complex problem, you really needed to create. You need to be able to break down the problem in a hierarchical way that allowed you to focus on the issues at hand. Meaning, one of the problems with LLMs is they get confused very easily. So if you change subjects on them, they get very confused, and especially the LLMs a year and a half ago. Right now, it's a little better, but especially then. So we started down that journey. We spent about a half year on it, and we got pretty far, but very, very quickly realized it's going to be very difficult to do anything other than simple chatbot, simple RAG thing, simple RAG agent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, without having a rich framework, a rich modular framework that we could extend and build things upon. And so we built a couple versions of that very rapidly in those 6 months. Brought our third co-founder, Luke Lawler, on, and he has this, enterprise experience. He worked with me at Paxata as well for many years, and he we struggled. We kept building more framework. We kept building more framework. And we realized that the tools that were there, which are largely the same tools available today, there's some new people that have entered very recently, but generally the tools that were there are the ones that people use today. Lacked many things, but the biggest thing they lacked was modularity and extensibility. They they were one dimensional, I guess, if you will. And we knew that we needed to build something, so we started building it. It started as just taking what we had, putting it open source, and then one day we kind of realized that can't do both, and this is sorely needed by everyone. I've been in the startup game quite a lot, and so for me personally, it was also a little bit of time to give back to the rest of the world some knowledge. And one thing led to another, and we built the framework out, trying to bring years of experience developing, engineering frameworks for people so they could build large scale applications. Did that at Net Dynamics back in the 90s, as you mentioned earlier, and continue with that throughout my career. And so to bring that expertise to something that was nascent, uh, and have the ability to start using some other parts of mine and Luke's background, particularly engineering wise, which is which is AI, and focusing heavily on AI as well, and bringing some of those concepts to a framework really led us down the path of starting this project, pushing this project, and and here we are today, a year and a half later, with something we're extremely proud of.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like the early days of big data and Hadoop, right? It's like you had all of these
Yeah.
pieces of open source software, and like in those days, you've got RAG and you've got vector databases, and you've got, do you need to bring some graph into it? It's like there
Right, right.
people are left to have to put all of the pieces together, and then you got to figure out governance on your own. Good luck with that.
Good luck with
So
that, right? Yeah.
it feels a little bit a little bit like a science experiment, like big data did when it first arrived.
Yeah, I kinda take it back even farther to the app server days. When we exited the world of client server, we were exiting the world of just straight up Unix servers running applications for people, or even desktop applications that were installed on your computer, to the early days of the web before there was really much there. It feels like that to me, like, and the reason I say that, I mean, obviously there's some big data aspects that you can bring in here, but it feels like that to me because the going forward, the amount of change that Gen AI will have, and agents in particular will have on the world, not just the programming world, but the world in general, is will dwarf the impact, will the that will make the impact that the internet had and the web had on people's daily lives. It'll make that look like nothing. Like this will change many aspects of how humans communicate, work, interact, and gain knowledge, which is what I find most exciting about it. Is is the ability to learn pretty much anything, anywhere, anytime, and it the impact's going to be huge, and to be at the forefront, to be at the beginning of that, for me personally, at the end of my career or towards the end of my career, is something super exciting, right? Like it's very exciting.
Maybe I'll just add one thing to it, which is, uh, you know, we felt that timing was really important, and it always is important. And arguably, you could be early, but it's never good to be late. And we felt like while we were early, there were enough fundamental advances in the models that were good enough for us to make sure we could take advantage of that and really build the next layer, which is the orchestration, the infrastructure, to let people build effectively on LLMs, and then ultimately have that being a transformative experience from a user standpoint to be able to experience all of this magic that the underlying models and GenAI is bringing to the table. But without that missing middle, it was going to be very hard for users to really experience the impact that GenAI has the potential to have. So kind of playing a very key part, and this was the right time for us to go build that. Of course, that's all unfolding over the last 18 months, as you've seen. There's been a tremendous amount of progress in the underlying model layer, and really where a lot of the focus of the attention should rightly be is on the infrastructure bits layer, and then of course the applications that are built on top of it.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out.
Well, you certainly have a big endeavor in front of you. I mean, when I think of AI agents, I think about several characteristics, right? They're usually autonomous. They can act on their own. They can act. They can also react. They can interact with other agents, with humans, with programs, with machines. They have intelligence and can learn and adapt. And they have limitations. They have to be limited, right? Or else they we end up with the Terminator, right? But the AI agent explosion is happening, and literally these AI agents are going to take over the world, not in an evil sense, but they're going to proliferate, I think, faster than generative AI. You look at a company like Hugging Face, they already have 1.4 million different data sets, models, and apps. That's insane. I mean, that's in a very short amount of time. So as you were looking at Gen AI and its emergence and the coming onslaught of AI agents, what are the challenges that you saw in advance that led you to build this AI agent server platform?
Yeah, I mean, I can take that as well, Ravi, to start with, and then maybe take it over you and get your security expertise in it. So the challenges, what are the challenges? Well, I think the biggest challenge I think people have when they're starting to use Gen AI, especially as a programmer, let's just focus on that, is kind of you need to program for behavior. You can't program, using standard programming techniques. Everything's statistical. There are no right and wrong answers in these questions. Now, you need to make sure things aren't going off the rails. You need to put guidelines and have a framework that can do that for you. But that's a radically different approach to programming than the standard, let's just go write some code and make it do what I want to do. Testing's totally different. That's a huge topic in the world of agent programming right now, is how do I test this thing? And if you're coming to that from a classic computing background, classic programming background, you want absolute tests. You want things that always work. Well, you're never going to get that. And then coming to it from an AI world, we need to use more of those techniques, but you want the ability to measure and to know if something is performing or not within guidelines, and then be able to measure that. The other thing a classic engineer would measure for testing is, okay, well, I wrote my test, it works, it's out the door. When I release more software, if it still passes, I'm fine. And if the app's running the same version, it won't break. But that's not true anymore because models change, models drift. Things are, you'll get model drift. You'll get a lot of the concepts from ML coming into the testing world of a Gen AI app. So you have to merge those two worlds together in a platform that works. So testing obviously is one huge challenge. Understanding the way people think is another. You need to model, like I said in the beginning, you need to model behavior. You're not modeling code. So if you treat an agent, if you code an agent and prompt an agent as if you were talking to another human, then then things tend to work. If you try to tell it exactly what to do, it doesn't work, right? So you need to coach statistically, you need to coach behaviorally. So I have a huge interest in psychology, and I know you do, John, as well, in philosophy and psychology. And that's more of the approach you need to take. And that's really difficult for engineers to think that way, right? It's very difficult. So I think those are some of the difficulties that I've seen. And then the last I would say is not a difficulty, but it's kind of an amazement. Every day I use an agent or an LLM, I'm shocked. I am just absolutely taken aback by what is the art of possible. I don't think anyone in this world, maybe a few, quite truly realize the art of possible. As you said, it will proliferate many parts of our life, and I don't think anyone can realize what that's going to be. I do lots of thought experiments where I try to figure it out, where I try to think about it and go down that rat hole. I just don't. It will change many aspects of how people behave, think, act, work, everywhere. Not just their work lives, but their day to day lives as well, right? So. But all of that is meaningless, and all of that is not for the good if you don't have governance guidelines and security. And this word we like to talk about, which is trust. So, Ravi, maybe you can tackle that topic.
Yeah, I mean, the trust comes in various forms, right, John? We think about trust as, can I reliably understand the outcome that these systems are delivering for me? And I think you've touched on that a bit, Dave. But the other part of it is really, can I trust that my data is being used the right way? Can I trust that the identity, the privacy, the sensitivity of all of this is, uh, at the highest order, right? And there's a lot of work to be done in that area, and especially if we're saying that every individual is going to have an assistant, an agent, and that every uh, individual in a company is going to have a coworker as a digital agent, right? So we're going to actually fundamentally be able to offload our personas to these agents, and so if they're acting on our behalf. There's a lot of underlying things like permissioning, authentication, um, lineage, understanding. Like you said, a lot of these things are today in a very like a bit of a black box, and so you really need that explainability, the ability for you to be able to authenticate and really trust that those agents are acting with the right set of controls in place, right? So that's a big part of it. I do think that the other challenges you mentioned, has to also do with how do we make sure that these agents are adopted in those workflows that people have. And there's always going to be a reluctance to go and do something unless it's proven first in low risk kind of workflows. So today what we're seeing is that, people will use agents at the lowest risk possible so that there's trust that's built over time. So it's not going to happen overnight. And so we have to make sure that those initial projects, those initial agents are really built and then delivering what they say they can deliver so that that trust gets built up over time. And that's where we are today. And that's always going to be how adoption goes. And although it's faster than most other changes in technology, it is going to be the way that transpires, in my view. And then the other part of it is, really what is the customer experience? How are the users using these agents, right? So it has to feel like it's either an entirely new but positive experience, so like 10 times better than it was before, or it's the same experience but it's using they're using it in a very natural way. So that interface, and that's got to do a lot of different things, including chat being the interface today, but what is it going to look like tomorrow? So it has to be, I think, from a user perspective, it has to feel natural, and it feels natural because it's designed a certain way by the underlying toolkits, but it's also trusted, and that experience is a magical experience that then people will then say, okay, this is something that I could use. I might not even know as a user that these are agents. And in fact, that would be the most magical experiences, which is the agents are completely invisible to the user. Of course, we as technology nerds love to geek out about these terminologies, so we can call it agents all day, and users don't care, right? So that would be ultimately the way, we would all like it to work, I think. Anyway, that's a lot of things to say, but yeah, hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to add a few because I think and you've sort of addressed some of this, but I think transparency is super important on a number of levels because organizations won't accept a black box. So you have to be able to explain what is happening behind the recommendations that are being made. You have to be able to explain when a mistake is made and it costs the company thousands or millions of dollars, what happened, right? So transparency, I think, is going to be super important, but not just transparency on the AI level, but transparency for the behavioral aspects of it. So how are people using the platform? What's working? What's not? That those kinds of things I think have to be in a platform. And the other area that I think is very important is analytic and AI capabilities that are not agentic. So we've been doing machine learning and advanced analytics for a long time. And in order for these AI agents to be hyper intelligent, not just smart, we don't need smart agents. We need hyper intelligent agents that have access to analytics and machine learning and predictions and simulations and all of the stuff we've already been developing for years to be able to access that and feed into the persona-based agent that you were talking about, Ravi. The sort of the I call them the digital twin, right? The copy of me in my work to be able to assist me and to extend the work that I do. So I think there's bottom line. People are trying to put together these architectures themselves. It doesn't make sense to build that out. We need organizations and platforms like Eidolon to be able to solve those problems so that we can keep building the agents themselves. Which brings me to my next question. It's like, okay, well, what exactly do you put into an agentic architecture, into a platform that helps people deploy these AI agents and generative AI?
For sure. So the way we like to think about it is, again, coming back from my early days from an app server point of view, at Net Dynamics for the building the first app server. What we have now is a tool set available to build agents or just Gen AI in general is a lot like it was then, like right when all that was happening. Uh, if you think about if I'm developing something for the web today, the set of tools you have available to you are huge, right? They're anything you want to do has probably been built and you need to assemble them, right? Maybe that's not totally true, but I think it's generally true. So right now we don't have that. How did we get there? Well, it's building upon the shoulders of giants, right? Whoever said that, I forget who said that. Anyways, building upon the shoulders of giants is how that got there, right? And uh, the tool set we have available today is bare metal. It's very bare metal. Um, one of the things I think that's been thrown out in the last few weeks is Gen AI reaching a plateau? Are we at the end, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And I don't think so. But even if we are, it doesn't really matter. The way I like to think of that is uh, single-threaded, single-core processors versus multi-core processors. Even if Gen AI and an LLM is reaching its max, it's reaching its max as a single core. The next phase, the next step is how do I do many things in parallel together to solve a single problem? Distributed parallel computing, right? And so the biggest component of an agent architecture is the ability to do many things in parallel. So how do you do that? You need an operating system that can manage the key aspects of everything that's there. You need it to be modular. You need it to be extensible. But more importantly, you need it to manage networking, right? So how do agents talk with each other? I don't developer, just make them talk. I really don't care, right? So we need that built, right? So that's kind of phase one. You need the ability to monitor, measure, meter, not only the running processes, if you will. We use the word process in Eidolon to represent a single thread of communication between one or more agents. You process hierarchy tree, an agent, you talk to a chat bot, it's the top of the process hierarchy tree, and it fans out. All those processes are managed and monitored and metered for you. You need that. You need the trust things that Ravi was mentioning, right? So any kind of governance needs to be at that level. RBAC needs to be at that level. That's at the operating system level. Again, as a user, as a developer, you don't care. As a DevOps person, you definitely care. As a CISO person, it's a must, right? So those controls have to be built into the platform. The next thing you think about when you think about an architecture, before we get to the main CPU concept, is memory. So how do you think about memory in this behavioral programming world? Well, instead of key value store and Eidolon, it's called semantic memory. Or symbolic memory. I mean, sorry. There's a reason for that, right? When you're coding and thinking about uh, long-term memory, or I need to store something that a user gave me along the way, or I need to store a pointer to a schema that was mentioned already in the conversation, bringing it back to analytics and data processing. Those are symbols to the LLM. The way the LLM thinks about them, they're some symbols from a psychology point of view. As symbols, they're symbols. Vector stores. Well, that's semantic memory, right? You're searching on the semantic meaning of what's going on. So the memory subsystem built into Eidolon gives you the ability to plug and play anything you want for the implementation of those. But the interface, the contract is fixed. It's there. So again, back to modularity and extensibility, it makes it very easy to work. And then finally is the concept of a CPU. Well, we call it an APU, an agent processing unit, in Eidolon. And that takes care of all LLM concepts and communication to you, right? For you, right? So if you need to, conversational memory context, however you want to think about that, it's just built in. You can configure it, you can change it, you can summarize it, you can do tasks on it, you can do anything you want to with it since it's a modular extensible system. But as a developer, if you're just using the system, it doesn't matter. It's just built in and it just works. So if I want to execute something on an APU that has a conversation, that may or may not be on my local, that may or may not communicate with other agents on my local machine or another virtual machine, however you want to think about it, um, you execute an action on an APU. You first get a process ID. You execute an action on an APU, give it a program with that process ID. It executes it. And if that needs to access memory, accesses the symbolic and semantic memory and file memory. I have to be a completist a little bit, but whatever. If, for example, you have a chat, somebody uploaded a multimedia file, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the architecture. And that's kind of what you need to do, right? You need to think at the high level. You need to be able to build with Lego blocks. There's a whole nother set. I don't want to get too deep. There's a whole nother set in Eidolon about that concept of Lego blocks. But I think you get the picture, right? Modularity, extensibility.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a matrix of capabilities. We think of architecture as layers. And what you're talking about it's really a matrix because you have many and many, right? Different kinds of data, different kinds of inputs. They all have to be processed centrally, but they require different kinds of processing.
Right.
And then you have to put all of those pieces together. So it really is a very complex construct in order to be able to do this.
It can get there, right? So the key for any good API is to make the developer think it's trivial. And I think people that have tried to build out these architectures in enterprises start with the trivial and then realize, wow, this got really hard really fast. Um, for us, I don't think it got truly insane until the concept of long-term memory was added. then you're really twisting your brain to figure out how to manage context over a long history when you're only programming with behaviors and not with actions. It gets pretty weird and difficult. I mean, I'd say weird more than difficult, right? Like, because you can't think as a programmer. You need to start thinking as a psychologist. You really do. And anyways, so that's kind of crazy. But another way to handle that level of complexity is to think of it like Lego blocks, and um, build upon constructs in the system. So we have a RAG agent, and a RAG agent, we have a RAG tool. Let's call it that. It is an agent, but it's whatever. And th- the idea of that is that all you need to do is configure it, and then once you configure it, you can use it for whatever need you have. A better example, that's an API agent. We can talk to any API that has a Swagger open API definition, however you want to say it. It has a schema associated with it, um, in the world, pretty trivially. And it's one agent, and you configure it with the operations that you want to expose, not the definitions, not what they are, nothing like that, just a list. And it will go out and pull in the schema, understand it, process it. And then when you want to call an API as a coder, you write in English, I'm trying to do this with this API, and the LLM figures it out and calls it for you. That's the way APIs will communicate in the future. It won't be this mundane, I need to match this schema to that schema to this thing. It literally will be an agent communicating with an agent, telling it to call an API. That's weird. As a developer, that's pretty weird and out there. We have a few of those built into the system like that. And now you add long-term memory to that, John, and you have an agent that can learn how to talk to GitHub over time, that makes fewer and fewer mistakes, with the API and the intent that the users have with it at the structural level and semantic level. Crazy concepts, right? Like,
Now,
yeah,
I would love to work with you guys and come up with a checklist, right? We need a checklist of, for anybody that's considering looking at an agentic architecture, what are and it's not like from other platforms, if it's a database, here's the 10 questions you have to ask.
right.
But I'm sorry, if it's an agentic architecture, here's the 27 questions that you need to ask and the things that you need to look for in the platform. Um, this is rocket science, actually. Uh,
Ravi, maybe it's a good time to ping our daily stand-ups. To pump our daily stand-ups. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's a time of rapid change and evolution, and what we're doing in terms of encouraging people to come and join our stand-ups which we do on a daily basis at 11 a.m. EST, and we build in the open. We're exposing or sharing with the community as to all of the things that we're working on, and the hope is that as people find interesting things to work on, they co-create and build with us these standards, these best practices, these checklists. And it's not just coming from us, but it's really coming from a wider set of community, right? Of people who are actually building these solutions. So,
yeah.
so to your point, yeah, if anyone wants to join, anyone listening here wants to join our daily stand-ups and build with us, it's actually a great opportunity for us to do that. So we're on Discord, so please feel free to join and check us out.
Yeah. Is there any particular kinds of skill sets that you're looking for? Or, I mean, I'm sure people are out there and think, well, that sounds exciting and fun, but what kind of a person, what kind of skill set does a person need to have to join and
Yeah,
participate
actually,
with?
it actually doesn't matter what skill sets you have. You do need to be curious and want to learn. I think that's maybe the minimum requirement. Because what we're seeing is that the community of builders are not just contributing code. Of course, there's a lot of that. But there are also folks up and down different kind of functions and skill sets. So someone who's interested in product, someone is interested in marketing, or building demos, writing articles, creating blogs. All of those are really interesting and really important because we want to educate. We're in the education and awareness phase of all of this stuff, as you know, John, right? And people like you, of course, are doing yeoman's work to bring this to the masses. But we really think it's important to people show real examples of agents working and practical examples that can be productionalized. And to do that, it has to have different voices, not just ours, to amplify. And so, yeah, in some ways, you don't need a skill set at all. Of course, if you're technical, Dave can go into what we're looking for from a coding standpoint. But go ahead.
Well, it kind of
No.
Yeah, that it would be nice to have somebody even with a background in psychology that would participate with you based on the things that you were saying, Dave. I think that's a great, because I think that people think unless I'm a coder, I can't participate. But I think there's a lot of ways with subject matter expertise, many different ways. So let me throw this out to you. We'll make this kind of a final question. As an AI leader, what considerations do I need to start start getting ready? This AI agent thing. I like to say it's coming like a swarm of bees, and these leaders are either going to get stung multiple times or they're going to make honey. So what should data leaders, analytics leaders, AI leaders, what should they be thinking about with regard to AI agents?
I'd say from my standpoint, and I think we all feel this way, which is we have a strong bias for action. So I would just recommend that leaders also follow the same philosophy, which is do something and don't wait for being a fast follower just because, there'll be some mistakes made and, we'll all learn from them. But it's really important to do something because it is, like we said, a fast moving, it's really a train that's moving fast. It's left the station and you can either get off or get on it or be left behind. And so, there's a lot of ways to go about doing it. Obviously, there's a lot of thought leadership around this. There's consultants that you can leverage. And those are typically things that big companies can afford, right? They have large teams of people. They can afford to do pilots and projects and hire consultants to help them. I really feel for everyone in the middle, which is small and medium businesses. And there's a lot of them, right? So less than 1% of them actually have the wherewithal to have large, substantial IT teams. And for that, we want to make this thing ubiquitous, AI and LLMs, and of course, agents. And so everyone should be able to build applications and LLMs. And we think particularly using toolkits that are open source, ours are like ours, of course, it doesn't matter. As a great leveler, great equalizer of all companies to be able to leverage and build an LLM. So anyway, do something. And whether you're small, big, or somewhere in between, certainly we're here to help, but there's a lot of technology to leverage these great engines, which is on the underlying models. And the real question is, how are you going to build on this engine? How are you going to build the car with the right seat belts and all the right features that you want to drive it and to get value out of it? And that starts with doing something.
It's not just for tech. Like, that's what I would add. This is going to change the world. I always tell this story real quick of my nephew, Willie. He's 25 years old. He works for this blue collar worker. He works in the trades, and he's an expert in pumps and how to rebuild them and install them and things like that. Not small pumps. These giant industrial sized pumps. And he is now the expert on anytime anyone has a question. Why? Because he has Claude on his phone, right? And even if you're the leader of a blue collar company, it's going to change your company. No longer do you need to go look at the manual and search through the schematics on how to wire a particular pump or something like that. Just ask. You just ask an agent, right? And we need, again, more trust built into the underlying layers. You need to know the references and where the answers came from. That's probably the most minimal thing. But it's better than asking, somebody else that may or may not have the experience to do it. So it's not just for the tech world. Like we as engineers and as tech leaders get wrapped up in that. This will change a lot, which means for entrepreneurs like us, there's lots of opportunity, right? So yes, there's opportunity at the tech side, but there's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah, I think there's a simple answer too. Just look for one thing, right? Find one thing in your executive leadership where you could use some kind of Chat GPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever it is, and plug it in and start using it if you haven't already. And as a leader what your day is made up of. What kinds of tasks are menial and yet you have to do them every single day, and they're the things you can't pass off to someone else. So begin to ask, is there a way to use an LLM, to use an AI agent to be able to make those things simpler? I got on the phone with my daughter today, and my daughter she's like, "Dad, you know about this AI stuff?" And she's starting a new business. And it's a small business, and I walked her through prompts on how to create a glossary for her website that would basically help her search engine optimization, so that when she launched, she could quickly rise through the ranks. And we did the whole thing in about 5 minutes. And she was completely blown away because she typed in as I was helping her figure out what to type in, and it popped up. And the lights went on for her. And I guarantee you, she got her hands wet. She's gonna dig in, and she's gonna do more. And so every executive team should be touching it. They should be playing with it. And if you're an IT leader, you need to get this into the hands of your executives, into the hands of your employees. And sure, you need to have guardrails, and you need to be careful about, but I'm sorry, but there's 1,000 articles on what guardrails to use. You can just ask Chat GPT or Gemini or Claude or go do a search.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to jump in. I think if people do this, guys, they'll be ready for the point where it grows in their company. Whether they're big or small, they're going to need an agentic architecture. There's the point where those AI agents are going to be swarming, and we need to control them. And what you guys are doing is absolutely needed and absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your insight here on the Digital Analyst. And I hope we can have you back when this thing is ripping and roaring. Thank you guys a million.
Thanks so much, John.
Hey, thank you so much for joining this podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure and like and subscribe to the Insight Jam YouTube channel. We will be coming back in a couple of weeks. Lots of more episodes. We're going to be talking more about agentic AI, agentic architectures, artificial intelligence, data analytics, data engineering, all of those topics that are driving digital dominance today. If you're interested in more information from me, you can find me at ferraroconsulting.com, or best, just connect with me on LinkedIn. For Dave and Ravi, you can connect with them also on LinkedIn. Their website is eidolon.com. That's EIDOLON. EIDOLON.com. Eidolon. And hey, join them for one of their stand-ups and participate in what they're doing in this open source project to bring agentic architectures to the masses. Thank you again, and we will see you soon.